You're listening to JetNation Radio, the official podcast of JetNation.com, the largest independent fan site in the NFL. Be sure to check out our forums and talk all things Jets with thousands of other diehard Jets fans. Now, to get you up to date on all the latest Jets news, notes, and quotes, here are your hosts, Glenn Naughton and Alex Varallo.
Good evening, Jets fans. I am Glenn Naughton. This is JetNation Radio. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight. Exciting show because free agency is in full swing. Apologize for last week. Blog Talk was a bit of a disaster. And I'm hoping we don't get the same tonight because I'll tell you what, as I logged in and I did my usual process, clicked the button to log in, and first, and this has never happened before, I got a message just saying we're having a problem with our system. Please try again. And I thought, oh, damn, here we go again. But anyway, we are here. If I am not mistaken, my co-host, Alex Varallo, is on the line and able to hear me. Am I correct, Alex?
Yes, indeed. All systems
do that
go
long pause.
side.
I thought you didn't hear me. That was too long of a pause. Don't do that again.
I had myself on mute just for a second there as I was getting myself set, and then I was like, he's probably going to think that we dropped again.
I was about to throw the laptop and say, that's it. It's a wrap.
Yep.
Are you there?
We had some troubles, but we're getting back in order, and we're amidst the free agent frenzy, and this is very, very much needed distraction with all the let's just say issues going around the world, and we'll just leave it at that because we hear enough about that every corner we turn, and we're here to talk about something a little bit better. Our New York Jets.
Yeah, I almost wasn't going to do a show because it's so hectic right now with my situation, and I thought, you know what, I need a distraction, and there might be people out there who listen to this show who feel the same way and who would like a distraction. So we're going to talk about the Jets. If we want to talk about the misery in the world coming to an end and the end of civilization, tune into something else as soon as you're done listening to us because it's everywhere.
Turn on the news.
Yeah. So Alex, free agency in full swing. In the early hours, we know how it is. When somebody doesn't get signed in the first 10 minutes, it's time to fire the GM. The biggest surprise, though, let's be honest, Alex, and it really goes to show it pisses me off a little bit because I understand that, guys in the media, some of them got to make stuff up. Some of them, it's like, 100% speculation. They may even believe what they're saying, but it's speculation. Some of them say, oh, I got this from this source, that from that source. But sometimes they're just so damn sure of themselves about, oh, this is going to happen. Here's what the Jets are going to do. Like I saw the articles that, Joe Douglas is going to get on the phone with Jack Conklin right away. I saw one tweet, and it may have been Tony Pauline. I apologize if it wasn't, but I'm pretty sure it was, saying the Jets were prepared to make Jack Conklin the highest paid lineman in the NFL. And I was like, Jesus, like, I want the guy, but over $15 million, I'm not so sure. He's not. I understand that you have to overpay in free agency. I get that. But you shouldn't be overpaying by like 45% or 40% or whatever. So I'm like, oh, man, they're going to get Conklin, but I'm going to be kind of bummed because it's going to cost them $18, $19 million. 3 minutes into free agency, he signs with the Browns for $14 million a year. And I was like, what the hell's going on? Weeks. How long ago was it that we heard that Conklin had told another NFL team he was prepared to sign with the Jets? Which I think I said at the time sounded like an agent plant, like that Rosenhaus put that out there to make other teams want to up their offers. But even still, like the number of reports I saw that he was the top priority, big money, they're going to go all out for this guy. $14 million he signs with the Browns. It's like, how could you be that far off base? You're not like a little bit wrong. You just told us this guy was going to get like a $20 million a year deal, and he gets $14 million, and the Jets. Then we hear the Jets didn't even really make an offer yet. Like they were interested, but it didn't even get to the point where they talked numbers. So Jets lost out on Conklin. Again, if it was for 17, 18 million, I'd be disappointed. 14? Sorry, if they lost out for 17, 18 million, I wouldn't care. But at 14, I'm like, it wouldn't have been a bad number. But what are your thoughts? For that number, would you have been happy to have Conklin? Or were you just happy to let him move on and go elsewhere?
Yeah, for $14 million, I think I would have kicked the tires on that. You know, a lot of people bring up good points. You know, there's reasons why the Titans are moving on from him, and apparently his film prior to the 2019 season was not as stellar, apparently, and I guess that just was one of the reasons why the Titans decided, you know, not to move forward with him. But apparently he did very well last year, and he improved his play. And that's not to be unexpected. A lot of players that are on contract years seem to elevate themselves because they get a little bit of that juice running, and they want to go out there and obviously put their best product of themselves out there so that they can get the most money when they hit the market. So I would have been comfortable at $14 million. You know, at first I was one of the people, and I'll you know, everyone sees my tweets, so there's no hiding it. At first I was like, everyone just calm down, you know. And then Thuney gets tagged, and Conklin goes, and then Glasgow went. And I think it was when Glasgow was off the market is when I said, okay, now the temperature in the room's a little bit, you know, warmer, and my collar's starting to get a little itchy, and, you know, I'm pacing in my living room. So, you know, we feel all the emotions here just like everyone else. And, you know, the Jets did this last year too. They seemed to be a little bit quiet early on in the process, and then, you know, in the evening it seemed that, you know, when they do all their work, which is actually prime time right now, I wouldn't be surprised if something happens during this show, and that would be fun to also do as well. But, yeah, I do feel like we missed out on Conklin, but, you know, we did make some other moves in different areas, and obviously the draft is everything, so we can't just say that, you know, how many teams win and lose the off season, and then they go in the opposite direction according to what, you know, the media puts out there. So it's not the end of the world. It would have been nice, but for $14 million, I do feel like we had the income to make that signing.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, as much as I say, you know, you can't panic about the early results of free agency. We don't sign a guy in the first few minutes, blah, blah, blah. I did, I don't know if panic is the right word, but I did worry a little bit because, you know, we've said on this show, I know me personally, Alex, I've mentioned Connor McGovern, we both have, far more than we've mentioned Grant Glasgow. Now the media has said many times, they've mentioned Glasgow a ton, not so much McGovern. I preferred McGovern. But when they lost out on Glasgow, I thought, well, Jesus, this is the guy that all the writers are saying they want to key in on. No one's even mentioned McGovern. That's the guy I want. But I haven't really heard much in terms of them being interested in him. So I started to worry about that, and I forget who. I saw somebody was interested in McGovern, and I thought, man, that's the guy I want on the interior to solidify the center position. I want a veteran center. You know, I want a guy who's been there. I don't want a rookie in charge of making the calls, or, you know, not right off the bat anyway. Like, you want to bring in a Tyler Biadasz, and by week 7 or 8 you feel like he's ready to play, and you want to move McGovern to one of the guard spots. I'm fine with that. But basically, when they lost out on Conklin, I was surprised because of the dollar amount. When they lost out on Glasgow, I was like, hang on a second. If what we're hearing from Manish Mehta and from Connor Hughes and other guys on the beat, this was the guy they wanted, and they just lost out on him. Then they finished the night by signing George Fant, who was on nobody's radar in terms of covering the Jets. I didn't hear a single person mention him as a possibility. The first thing that came to mind was, because listen, I'm not going to sit here and pretend I'm a George Fant enthusiast. Like, I've watched a million, you know, like I've watched him play a million times. All I knew is, I was like, I'm sure that guy's not a starter. And the reason why people talk about Russell Wilson as an MVP every year is because his offensive line is atrocious and he's forever running for his life. That's all I could think. I thought, this guy isn't good enough to start on one of the worst pass blocking lines in the NFL. And I was like, this is it? This is the day one signing? Because in my mind at that point, there wasn't going to be a McGovern. So I'm like, you don't get McGovern, you don't get Glasgow who you wanted, you don't get Conklin, who was the heavily rumored guy, but you get this guy who's a backup on a team that can't pass block. And I was not thrilled about that. You know, now having read more about him, he's a bit of a rarity in that he is still, I mean, he better not be a project at this point. But he was about as raw as you can get.
Not for $10 million a year.
Yeah, but as we know by now, you know, 3 years as a basketball player, 1 year of college football, where he played tight end, then he comes to the NFL, gets moved to tackle. So basically, literally started learning how to play offensive line in the NFL. Not a lot of guys do that. So even though he's been in the league a few years, I think you could still say he's pretty raw. But I still think $10 million a year is a lot for that. But listen, all we keep hearing, Alex, is that Adam Gase has this vision that he's going to have these crazy wide splits up front on the O-line, and they just want versatile O-linemen, and they want nimble O-linemen, guys who can move. Now, this guy can move. Whether or not he can play, we'll find out. But I saw an interesting tweet. I think it was from Jim Nagy, who runs the Senior Bowl. He put a side-by-side comparison of George Fant and Tristan Wirfs, and their numbers were nearly identical.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone's going, everyone's losing their minds right now about how well Tristan Wirfs moves. So this could be, and then we see the numbers. We see the guaranteed money. This is essentially a one-year prove-it deal. $3 million guaranteed the first year. If he doesn't do much after that, they can cut him with little to no cap implications. So to say he's going to start for sure, I think he'll be given a chance to start. But I don't think George Fant is a guy that you go into the season now and go, okay, we don't have to take a tackle at 11. We have George Fant protecting Sam Darnold's blind side. That's a little much for me. This doesn't preclude them from taking a left tackle in your mind, does it?
No, I think that, a lot of people have alluded and as putting together, today, is it March 18th? Today's lineup, Fant is currently being penciled in on the left side of the line. I have a strong feeling that if one of the guys that are the top 4, top 5 tackles is available at pick 11 in the first round, I think that's where the Jets are going to go, and we can move Fant to the right side, which might be better for us, and then we can, have our future blindside protector for hopefully the next decade, in his natural left tackle spot. So that's kind of what I'm hoping at. That's what I foresee. But
I don't know if you saw this, Alex, just now. The Seattle Seahawks, 2 years, $11 million for Brandon Shell.
Yeah, good for him.
Yeah, so it's as Adam Schefter says, nearly a trade basically. George Fant for Brandon Shell, and we'll see how he does. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there, but that just popped up. I saw Brandon Shell's name.
I was going to mention that, but yeah, kind of Jets-related news there.
Yeah, we like to keep up with the not just the guys that are coming. You want to see where guys are going. And look, Brandon Shell, not a great player, probably a lower-end right tackle, but when you look at, some of the other tackles out there, I didn't think he was a guy who was going to get big money, but I knew somebody would bring him in. He'd get paid pretty well. So $5.5 million, so kind of backup money. But again, the way things have gone in Seattle over the years, he's a guy who could steal a job. Because that's Seattle offensive line for years now. That's why people were so surprised they took a running back in round 1. But anyway, so moving on. So They add Fant. We've discussed McGovern. And they bring Alex Lewis back. Again, not big money. Manageable deal they can get out of if he doesn't play well. I don't think Alex Lewis, I don't view Alex, I'd said all along, I think you bring Alex Lewis back on a short deal. I was hoping 2 years. But you bring him back on a short deal, not a lot of guaranteed money, and you let him compete with a rookie. And you bring in a rookie in the draft, and now that's what this does. And there are other players that the Jets are rumored to have interest in along the offensive line. And I don't think by any means they're done. And if they could put themselves in a position where they head into the draft needing only a left tackle, they'd be in pretty good position. And Lewis wasn't fantastic last year, but listen, if you make the line better all around, everyone who looked terrible is going to look that much better. But the other guy, and I'd mentioned him on the show when we did our offensive preview, free agency preview, Alex, is Greg Van Roten from Carolina. He's supposedly the guy the Jets are looking at who would, I think he would be a starter on the interior. I think he would lead to Brian Winters being let go. But we'll see how that plays out. But what are your thoughts there? Do you like Alex Lewis coming back? And do you think Van Roten is a guy that they should be pursuing in place of Brian Winters?
Yeah, I think bringing back Alex Lewis was good. He's second year in the system, so he's familiar with I guess, what his role is supposed to be. So that should be beneficial, helping some of the new guys that are going to be coming in here, getting them acclimated. So that's always a good thing. It's not a, slam dunk kind of signing, but I think that it's a good move. It's solid for depth. We do know that he has the ability to start. I like your idea of bringing him in and also looking at the draft and bringing somebody on the interior to compete. Last night I put out a tweet, and I'd love any combination of the top 5 tackles in round 1, and then round 2, maybe looking at a Lloyd Cushenberry or possible Cesar Ruiz from Michigan. These guys are talked about as the top centers in this draft. I feel like plug-and-play guys. So, like you said, maybe we move McGovern to right, Alex Lewis plays left, and then we've got a rookie at center and a rookie at left tackle, and having Fant, who no one really knows, what he's capable of, if he's going to stink or if he could end up being a solid lineman. So, looking at what we were dealing with last year and kind of looking at what we could potentially have come April, we could comfortably say that this should be an improved offensive line. So with Alex Lewis coming back, I think that helps keep the unit together with his familiarity.
Now, as far as that offensive line, rumors have been floating around from time to time. Connor Hughes mentioned it the other day, saying that the Jets were not willing to part with a second rounder for Trent Williams from the Redskins. If the Redskins come down and say, all right, we'll take a 3, do you trade for this guy who is reportedly looking for a $20 million a year deal?
For Trent Williams?
Yeah.
Yeah. Somebody had threw that same scenario at me earlier. I think with the 3rd-round pick, those are, in my mind, still considered premium picks. You can find starters in the 3rd round. But we do know from previous 3rd-round picks, not everything is set in stone. Our 3rd-round pick last year is not on the team. We won't even mention his name. You should know that already. Chuma Doga, I believe, was a 3rd or 4th, early 4th-round guy. We attempted to throw him in due to injury. He held his own against guys like DeMarcus Lawrence, but then in other games we saw him getting beat like a drum as well. So if you're talking about a questionable young player that is hit or miss, 50% bust rate for an all-pro, Pro Bowl caliber lineman that can play left tackle, yes, the medicals aren't great, but you have to go with the upside. And I think a 3rd-round pick would actually suit the needs of this team, and it would most certainly improve us up front. I would not be too upset if the Jets found a way to figure out a move like that. The only thing that concerns me is the amount of money that he warrants.
That's what I was going to say.
The downside to it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say for a guy who's, the age, it's like he's not a young guy, but you do see these tackles play into their mid-late 30s if they keep themselves in shape.
Look at Whitworth.
Well, I was just going to say, now Whitworth, I didn't talk a lot about Whitworth this offseason, Alex, and the biggest reason for that, I don't know if this was an assumption on my part, but I felt like I'd read somewhere that Whitworth back to the Rams, that he was either going to retire or go back to the Rams. I didn't see anything where he would consider leaving, which is why I didn't mention him, because I thought, well, I'm not going to talk about it. If some guys at that point in their career, they're comfortable where they are and they just want to play another couple seasons. But if you can get a Whitworth or a Jason Peters on a 2-year deal, both guys in their late 30s, both guys still playing at a very high level, I don't know about you, Alex. I would do that. And I pitched that in a tweet a couple weeks ago. Some people didn't like it. I don't want a washed-up Jason Peters. Washed up? The guy can still play. And he's probably, they're both like just examples of those freak guys who are probably going to play well when they're 39 and 40 years old. So if I can get one of those guys on a short deal and then use pick 11 on a tackle, but see, that's where that would complicate things, because then you didn't pay a ton of money for Fant, but you paid enough money that if you take a tackle at 11 and you sign Peters or Whitworth, then what are you doing with Fant for $10 million, I don't know where that leaves him, but I think the Jets should look at Peters. I think the Jets should look at Whitworth. Absolutely, either one of them. But I still think the goal has to be a tackle at 11. But by doing that, let's say you bring in Jason Peters, and there is this run on tackles that some people are anticipating. Well, then
that seems to be the trend.
Yeah, but then if that happens, Alex, if all 4 tackles are gone by 11, that means 2 or 3 guys are falling, who have no business falling. I don't know how it would feel. Do you think if you're the Jets, let's say Joe Douglas signs Peters, and now you've got Alex Lewis, and you've got McGovern, and you keep Brian Winters around. You've added Fant. Does this open up the possibility of a defensive player at 11? And with the intention of getting the best left tackle you can next year.
Right, that would be certainly interesting because there seems to be some sort of phobia going around that there's going to be no tackles available when we get to the 11th spot. And you already know how I feel about Josh Jones. And in my mind, it's like, are there really teams out there that, are going to pass up on a franchise quarterback? Because 2 years ago, Justin Herbert was talked about as the consensus number 1 in the 2019 draft until he decided to stay another year. And then somehow, with a 32 touchdown and 6 interception year, I thought he played very well. But apparently, Joe Burrow with his 60 touchdown season just crushed everything that was the, Herbert being the consensus guy. But we're not talking about that. I'm just saying that there's teams out there that needs quarterbacks, and this is the best way to get a young guy to, bring a new culture to your team. There's a great cornerback, lockdown guy that's probably going to be in Pro Bowl conversations in Jeff Okudah. I can't see him sliding. There's a generational pass rusher talent in Chase Young. There's no way he's sliding. Isaiah Simmons is a freaking unicorn, so you can't tell me that he's going to slide. These wide receivers, Jerry Jeudy and CeeDee Lamb, these guys are the types of players where you put them in your offense, and then next thing you know, you have safeties hanging over on that side, and then you've got guys trying to play man or zone or bump and run coverage, and then all the other guys, the slot receivers and the guys on the opposite field that are getting one-on-one looks, all of a sudden they start to blossom because these young superstars are coming in to change your offense around. There's a lot of good talent in this, top 10, top 11 range, and it's going to be tough for teams. But, I don't want to solidify any players in stone in March because we're weeks away from the draft, and, every single move, every 10 minutes, the draft board is changing for all these teams. So in a scenario where the Jets have completed a full revamp of this offensive line, and they're no longer putting themselves in a position where they have to go offensive line for tackle. If they go defense, yes, I believe the Twitter world might melt down, and some people might just lose their nerve completely, which I completely understand. But depending on who it is, if we're talking about Clavon Chason, we've been pounding the table for an edge rusher since John Abraham. I would be fine with that. If Isaiah Simmons were to fall, obviously, I would be all over that. If Okudah were to slide, obviously I'd love to get a lockdown corner. If it was a Derek Brown or this kid Marlon Davis, the guy that I think Peter Schrager alluded to during the Combine, that the Jets would take him, and I think everybody lost their mind with that. It's a possibility. I'm not going to put it off the table. It's not what I want to do.
No, they are not taking an interior D lineman. If they take a defensive player, it's going to be a guy who can run all over the field and make plays, or someone who can get to the quarterback. If they take another interior D lineman, that would be unacceptable.
I'm cringing. You can't see my face, but I'm in full cringe mode.
Yeah, that's not going to happen. That can't happen. But again, I think
almost 7 o'clock too.
Yeah, if you get Peters or Whitworth, and you feel like maybe you'll draft a guy, and maybe because again they're still supposedly in on Van Roten. So then you got Lewis, Van Roten, you got McGovern. You figure at least one draft pick, and then you got Fant and Adoga. You might go with your starting lineup out of that group, and say, all right,
and
next year.
Something that Manish talked about. I think he mentioned him last week or 2 weeks ago when we had our show. Ezra Cleveland, guys like Ben Barch, Austin Jackson. These are all players that apparently will be available that can play left or right tackle in the second round. So with the way that these contracts are set up, we're not tied to anybody. I believe we've got 2 years guaranteed into McGovern. So that's not even a long-term kind of deal. But it keeps us honest in the interior for the next couple of years. So there's absolutely a possibility to where the Jets can get flexible, maybe go offense in the first round. Maybe they do go defense at the edge or corner. Lord, no defensive line. Still get a second-round tackle and, work him in. And hopefully in 2021, 2022, you're looking at maybe Chuma Adoga on the right side and this, second-year prospect from the 2020 class that could play the left side. So the Jets are giving themselves a very, very good opportunity to be open-minded when it comes to day 1, day 2 of the draft.
Yeah, I think if they continue making moves like this, continue building that O-line and some of these names that they're reportedly interested in, they will put themselves in a spot where they have more flexibility. But I'll tell you what, I wouldn't mind one bit if they take another OT at 11. Bring in as versatile and nimble as some of these guys are. Bring them in to play guard. I don't care. Give me 5 350-pound men with quick feet in front of Sam Darnold and just let that dude sit back and pick defenses apart. Because I don't think I don't think as it stands now, unless it's a guy like Trent Williams who's just going to want $20 million, I don't think there's a guy you can bring in and say, listen, if it's a Peters or a Whitworth, you can say this guy's going to play left tackle for a year or two, and then pick 11 is going to take that spot over. And I mean that would be an ideal scenario, but we'll have to see, man. It's going to be it has the potential to be very interesting. And the other thing that we didn't mention that it's everyone's favorite option every year: trade down and add picks. Right? I mean, if you're Joe Douglas, let's say you feel comfortable with the O-line you've assembled, and there is an early run on tackles, leaving maybe a quarterback at 11, and a team wanting to move up. And if Joe Douglas thinks, well, I can move down and I can still grab myself a quality player at 16 or 17. I mean, not that that's you're talking Falcons and Cowboys. They're not going to be trading for a quarterback. But you know what I mean. If let's say it's the Raiders, I don't think they're exactly locked into Marcus Mariota and Carr. But although Carr, if they had any interest in moving him, they might have a tough time because right now the quarterback market is. I don't remember a time the quarterback market was this flooded. It's nuts. Cam Newton and Jameis Winston are out of a job. Teddy Bridgewater gets $20 million a year to take Cam Newton's job. So flooded quarterback market. But as it stands, the Jets are in a nice position if they make a couple of these moves to have that flexibility, and that's really what you want going into any draft. You don't want to be locked in where you absolutely must address one position, unless it's a quarterback and you're going to be in position to get one, then you don't mind. But when you need a guy, a guy at a particular spot, and there's not one there of the value that is where you're picking, and nobody wants to trade down with you, that's how you end up drafting, overdrafting or taking a guy you wouldn't normally take, or maybe you have to take a deal where you don't get the value that you feel you should. But that's basically where the Jets are right now. We're also going to be joined tonight, by the way, by Emory Hunt, who's going to come on and talk a little bit about the draft. He was in Indy. Emory, of course, of Football Game Plan. We're expecting him to call in any minute. And he doesn't have a ton of time.
Work, Mr. Emory.
What's that?
No, I was just saying he does phenomenal work. I enjoy, if you guys aren't following him, at FBall Game Plan on Twitter. He also has a YouTube channel. Very, very good at football stuff.
Yeah, Football Game Plan. Give that a follow on Twitter if you're not already. But I think what we'll do with Emory once he comes on, Alex, is go over some of the middle round guys. Like, I want to talk about the receivers with Emory because there are so many in this class. We've talked about the insane depth, but you wonder if teams are, because of that, like you mentioned Judy and Lamb earlier, I wonder if those guys might fall. Because, and I've said it a million times this offseason, because of supply and demand. If you're sitting there and you need a left tackle and you need a receiver, and there's only 4 left tackles that you think can start for you day one, but there are 9 receivers or 12 receivers that you think can start, and with varying degrees of success, of course, but you still think is a starting caliber player, do we see a few teams pass on Lamb and Judy and lead to those guys falling, and where the Jets could benefit if they decide to go that route if those tackles are gone? I can't say I'd hate it. I'm torn. You know, I've said a million times, if it's between the tackle and a receiver, there's a tackle on the board, I'm taking the tackle because there are only a handful. But if all the tackles are gone and you got Judy and you got Lamb, yeah, there is that part of me saying get a starting receiver in round 2 and grab another one with one of the third-round picks. But then there's a part of me going, Jerry Judy, that's CD Lamb. Like, grab one of those guys.
Right.
So I would have no issue with that at all, for obvious reasons.
With the amount of talent at wide receiver, there's very, very few that you can compare to those two that you just mentioned with some of the things that they can do, route running wise, you know, winning at the catch point and just being explosive after the catch and all those things. I mean, they kind of are, wherever the pedestal is you want to put them, they're a mile away from the next tier is the way I see it.
Yeah, and the guy I mentioned earlier, Jim Nagy. I don't think we've discussed this, Alex, because I was floored when I saw this. I mean, I've heard a lot of high praise for Henry Ruggs, but Jim Nagy, what Jim Nagy does, he runs the Senior Bowl. He gets together with teams and helps pick which players will be there. So he's doing as much work on these guys as a scout, and he's running it for all of college football. And he tweeted out the other day that there is no question in his mind that Henry Ruggs is the top receiver in this class. And I thought, wow, like that's. Mm-hmm. I've heard high praise for Ruggs. I haven't heard anyone say that. But his feeling was that Ruggs was a big reason why Judy was able to be as successful as he was, and really just. I don't want to say mucks things up because of course it's all a matter of opinion of who the top 3 guys are. But when Emory comes on, and I believe he is joining us right now, we're going to talk about some of the middle round guys in a stacked class. Emory, are you with us?
Yes, sir. I appreciate you guys having me on. Oh,
no, thanks so much for coming on. Pleasure is all ours. So we were just talking, Emory, about this deep draft class at the receiver position, and honestly, it's so deep. We've been talking about this class for probably months now, and everyone knows. I mean, listen, there's so many good ones. Everyone knows a lot of the names, but you do a great job in breaking down players and breaking down film and explaining what guys do well and what they don't. We mentioned you earlier, Football Game Plan. If you're not following him on Twitter, give Emory a follow. But Emory, instead of talking about the CD Lambs and the Jerry Judys and the Henry Ruggs, talk to us about how you view those sort of middle round guys. Like if you're the Jets and you've got those 2 third-round picks, and let's say you go OT with the first pick, and maybe if a guy like Cushenberry falls, you grab him in round 2, or Cesar Ruiz. Now you're the Jets. You're on the clock. You got a couple of third rounders. You got an early 4th rounder. Which names are you looking at that might be there that you think could be, ready to play almost immediately?
Well, one guy that has tremendous polish is Austin Mack out of Ohio State. He didn't produce a ton of huge numbers because of the guys in front of him, rightfully so, considering who was in front of him. But you look at when he got on the field, how productive he was, you watch his routes and how consistent he is in doing that, he's going to always find himself open. Another guy that's cut from the same cloth to me is Van Jefferson out of Florida. He may go in the 2nd round, but no one's talking about him as being one of the top tier receivers in the class. And I think he's definitely one of those guys because of what he does as far as his routes, as far as him catching the football, whether it's, over his shoulder, contested catches, things like that. He's able to do that consistently. So both of those guys are probably more of your Power 5 guys that are not being talked about enough. Another guy like is LaMichael Petway out of Iowa State, big body guy that can play inside or outside. So I see him as a split end, tremendous hands, and is very good in contested catch situations.
Now, do you have any thoughts? This is probably a later round guy, but I meant to ask you about him because I honestly hadn't seen much of him up until a few weeks ago. I was actually watching some Ohio State, and a guy probably didn't produce as much as they had hoped going into Ohio State, but Benjamin Victor. Any thoughts on him? I think there were some issues with drops with him, but his ability to kind of stop on a dime and accelerate and pick up extra yards, make guys miss, that really jumped out at me for a guy who's kind of projected as a 5th, 6th rounder.
Yeah, he had a really good week down at the East-West Shrine Bowl, and I was, impressed with how fluid he was for a taller guy. He's about a legit 6'3.5", 6'4", about 195, something around that way. And for him to be able to gear up, gear down, and get in and out of his break was pretty impressive. And, he had a good week at the Shrine Bowl, like I mentioned earlier, and you take that evaluation and you have that in your mind while you're watching his film, and you see why some people may or may not be all enamored with what he brings to him. Yeah, he has to find his level of consistency, and that's the biggest thing. Can he find that consistency? Does he play consistently fast, in addition to what he has to do catching the football? And those are some of the questions that people have about his game.
So, Emory, as we're going through this free agent frenzy here, a lot of people want us to bring back Robbie Anderson. I'm sure, as you've seen, he's got a special ability to stretch the field, and he's a very fun player to watch. He's explosive, and we consider him a big playmaker. In the event that we are unable to make him the deal to keep him here, are there any players that you feel that are similar to what he can do that maybe the Jets might find as a diamond in the rough in this coming draft?
Yeah, you look up to Rhode Island. There's two guys. There's Aaron Parker, who is 6'2", 204, but Isaiah Coltd, his cousin actually, and teammate. Both of those guys are tremendous receivers. And Coltd, he plays a lot like A.J. Green. I don't know if he's as athletic, but he's definitely athletic enough to where, when you watch him on film, he's impressive in that regard. He's able to find little creases in the defense and get deep down the field. He's able to track the football really well. I know he tested well at the combine, similarly to A.J. Green. Maybe doesn't have the top end speed Green had. I don't remember what Green ran in the 40, but I know Coltd ran 4.48, I believe. But Coltd is a really good receiver. I actually have him graded a share higher than Aaron Parker, who had himself a fantastic week down at the East-West Shrine game. Now, he didn't test particularly well as Coltd did, but he plays a really good game. And I think Coltd is probably more along the lines of Robbie Anderson, while Parker is more along the lines of what you have in Quincy Enunwa and what he brings to the table as far as being a very good physical receiver that complements someone like Robbie Anderson.
Now, Emory, the other area where Jets fans are, not just hoping now, but have been hoping for over a decade to find a playmaker is somebody coming off the edge. Probably not, unless, we said earlier, maybe if they make enough moves on the O-line, maybe K'Lavon Chaisson enters the equation in the first round. But if things play out the way we anticipate now, with them going with an offensive tackle in round one, what are some of the second, third, fourth round guys coming off the edge do you think could have an impact? And specifically, a guy I wanted to ask about, because I was actually hoping he wouldn't do too well at Indy and start climbing draft boards, but a guy that I liked was Alex Highsmith out of Charlotte. So if you want to talk about him and maybe a couple of other guys that aren't getting that first round hype that everybody hears about.
Well, Highsmith is, he was a productive player at Charlotte. Just his issue for me is he just doesn't have that next level burst or explosiveness. He's a good player, so I think in that regard, kind of will position himself to be nothing more than a situational guy, which is fine. But he just doesn't have that next level type explosiveness or burst or get off that you want to see from a top tier pass rusher. Bradley Anae out of Utah is another guy to keep an eye on. I'm a big fan of Bryce Huff out of Memphis. I like how those guys are able to, really win with both power and quickness. But to be completely honest, outside of Chase Young, this is a really kind of, I don't want to say average because people may see it as a bad connotation, but everyone is kind of the same after Chase Young. Maybe Jabari Zuniga out of Florida is a guy that you can, really like, or, Jonathan Green out of Florida, his teammate. But for the most part, I think you can shake up a bag and pull out one of these edge rushers and come up with the same guy.
And now, what about Kenny Willix out of Michigan State? He seems like a high effort guy who might be able to make some plays. Again, doesn't have that elite athleticism, that explosiveness, but a guy who seems like his effort, his motor is going to find him a place in the league.
Well, that's what I wanted to see when I popped on his film, because you read his accolades and the multiple All-Americans and the fact that this guy had all these spells and broke records at Michigan State. He was up for the Burlsworth Trophy, so he was like, okay, I'm excited to watch him. And then when you put on the film, it's just you're absolutely right. He doesn't have the speed or explosiveness. You wonder, like, man, how did he get all of these plays or make all these plays despite not having the speed and doesn't have a variety of moves and doesn't have more than one way to get to the quarterback, all that stuff. So I think, again, situationally, that's gonna be his role. Special teams, obviously, but again, this class, man, is just outside of Chase Young and maybe one or two other guys that you can kind of make a role for, like a AJ Epinesa, who's not even an edge rusher. He's more of a 5-tech, in my opinion. But outside of a couple of guys, it's not that good at the top, so to speak. You don't have that many elite talents coming off the edge. So it may be a year where free agency is your best bet to find someone that can make an impact right away.
Yeah, I feel the same way that you do in regards to there's Chase Young and then worlds away is everyone else. And I've had a hard time, placing these guys on who's the consensus number 2 and number 3. And Glenn and I were talking about a scenario where the Jets were to shore up the offensive line, before they get to the draft, and they're going to look toward defense. Now, early on, I believe it was, mock draft for, what was the guy's name, Clavon Chason out of LSU. Now, in the event that the offensive line is set, is that a player that maybe the Jets should consider to be their, consensus pass rusher moving forward?
And I am not as high on Chason as a lot of people are. He just didn't do it enough for me. He was okay, but I think a lot of people are going to benefit from LSU's championship season, and really carve a career out because of it. So I would probably choose Highsmith over Chason because of, at least I know Highsmith will be consistent. Chason, you didn't see it often or consistently. And that's the issue, especially if you're going to spend a premier pick on someone in the first round. You want him to hit his best trait consistently throughout the game or throughout the season. And you just got to be honest with yourself. When you're watching Chason film, it's like, man, I just don't see that often from him. Like, you don't know. Sometimes you try to figure out, well, who's a threat in the game, and a lot of times you don't see it. An LSU defender outside of Stingley, and you saw it more often from Delpit than you did from Chason or Queen. Now, Queen is a really good linebacker. I think he's a good player, but he's not along the same lines of Roquan Smith. But he's a pretty good player. He's probably more Danny Trevathan than he is Roquan Smith, which is fine. But, again, I just think that there are a few players off that LSU team that I think will benefit from the championship pedigree, and that's why you saw a lot of them come out early. But Chason was the guy that just has to find that consistency for me.
Now, one guy, Emory, that hasn't really generated any talk for a couple of reasons. He's a projected sort of late rounder, wasn't invited to the combine because he had some issues, and we talked earlier about guys lacking that explosion, that first step that gives you that advantage in trying to get to the quarterback. So because he wasn't at the combine and because he had some issues, I don't know if you've done a ton of work on him. So I apologize if it's a curveball, but Tipa Galei from Ohio, and I may not even be pronouncing that right. Galei from Utah State. I heard his name mentioned a few weeks ago, and was able to find a couple of Utah State games, and he did jump out a little bit in terms of a guy coming off the edge. But again, there are character concerns that meant no combine invite, and they could have him falling a lot further than he would have otherwise. I believe he had some issues where he was suspended from the team, got into an altercation and assaulted some students. So he hurt himself there. But have you seen much of him? And if so, do you have any thoughts?
He's my 22nd rated outside linebacker. You like his length. I don't think consistently he plays with length. So it's like you have this, you're 6'5", you're 227, you have this length, you have a good deal of athleticism, but you don't play with it, so you render yourself no different than a guy that's 6'1", 230. So for him, it's about realizing, how big he is, how long he is, and play with that. And technically, he just doesn't have, the best skill set. And going into the NFL, you want guys that are technically sound, because that's one area in the NFL where they don't teach is essentially 98% scheme-driven in the NFL. So you have to really work on your technique on your own and find ways to get better within your own game outside of your scheme work. And so that, to me, is something that he has to really get better at as far as, like, being more technically sound at the point of attack, being able to use that length to shut down that back coming his way or going away from him, or if the run is coming his way, just like close the door, set a hard edge. And I think those things he has to get better at and doing it consistently.
All right, well, listen, thanks so much for taking the time to join us, Emory. Like I said, those are the two spots we wanted to cover with you, is receiver and edge, because definite need for the Jets there. And because of the plethora of receivers, there should be some mid-round guys. And they may have to address, because of their other needs, they may have to go edge in the middle rounds. So thank you so much for joining us, Emory. Always a pleasure.
Appreciate you guys. And for the listeners out there, if they want to see my scouting reports for over 650 prospects in this draft, we are selling our inaugural draft guide this year. So they can find that at footballgameplan.com/2020 draft guide. Again, over 650 prospects individually graded and also scouted. And we're talking about the attributes, the strengths, the areas of improvement, and those areas where, guys can get better. And I'll give you the exact number, 689 prospects in total. You're talking about over 700-something pages of a draft guide. So footballgameplan.com/2020 draft guide to get all of my thoughts on every player that I scouted this draft class.
Fantastic stuff, Emory. Thank you so much. Be sure to check that out.
Appreciate you guys.
All right, take care, Emory.
Thank you so much. Have a good night.
All right, so that was Emory Hunt from Football Game Plan. Some good stuff from him. I enjoyed that because, as I said, wanted to get his thoughts on some of the middle round guys. And Van Jefferson is a guy that Jets fans have talked a lot about, of course, with his dad being on the staff here with the Jets. But we're just going to go to the phones real quick. We had a caller calling in from our 347 area code.
Hey, what's up, guys? It's Lamar. How y'all doing?
Good. How you doing, Lamar?
Hey, I had a question. Is it true about Brady really going to the Buccaneers? And second, why would he leave the Patriots? I don't know. I'm just kind of baffled by this.
Well, I think this is a case of Brady and Belichick wanting to prove, or Brady wanting to prove that, it was more him than Belichick. Because you're right. Why would you leave that situation? I mean, there is the issue of the weapons. And if you can turn the radio down there a little bit, Lamar, we're getting some feedback. But that's the story, is that he's going to get $30 million from Tampa Bay, and you have to imagine that years of this debate: is it Brady? Is it Belichick? Is it Brady? Is it Belichick? And there's been some internal strife there, even though of course they deny it publicly, as any team would. But I think the Jimmy Garoppolo thing, I think there was some truth to that Brady was a little bit threatened by that, and I think he felt that Belichick was ready to move on, so there was some bad blood there. And this is the first time in his career that they didn't extend his contract during the season. So when they didn't
that's just crazy, It's honestly like why he's leaving a team, he's leaving a fan base that's in love with him. I mean, he's such a big part of New England, Boston. I mean, a lot of people, especially me, I want to suck on his big fat white cock, his big long purple-headed mule pecker.
Well, listen, I don't doubt that for 1 second. I think that's the case for the entire Boston metro area. I've been up there. I think that's the general consensus. So I don't think that comes as a surprise to. Does that surprise you, Alex? Doesn't surprise me at all.
Not at all.
No, I mean, like I said, I've been up to Boston, and listen, I love Boston. Boston is an incredible city. If not for their sports teams, it would be like a top. I mean, listen, I can be an adult about it. Boston to me is a top 5 city in the States. I love it. I love New York. I love Boston. I love Charleston. I love Colorado Springs. Like, there's so many amazing places in the U.S. And Boston is one of them. But listen, they love Tom Brady, and why wouldn't they? The guy's won 1 million Super Bowls. I mean, Jesus, it's absolutely nuts. So I think that's and really we should have touched on that earlier, Alex. That's really who was it the other day? He said that the winners in free agency this year have already been determined no matter what happens, and it's the Jets, Bills, and Dolphins because Tom Brady is out of the division.
But now's a good time to bring that up. I don't know if he's officially put pen to paper yet. So then I guess that's when we can start, popping the champagne bottle. It's a good day. It's a good time of the year to see that, all the rumors and speculation and, Tom Brady is finally moving on. He's he's gotten further away. He hasn't left the league entirely, but he's further away from the Jets. And I look forward to hopefully taking over and being the team that is talked about in the AFC East that is constantly just dominating their conference and going to playoffs and doing things like that because playing that guy twice a year has just been terrible, for us fans. Some games we've competed, but we know that we haven't beaten them in their house in years, and it was getting really, really old, just, kind of like the same old spiel every single year. You're talking about all the top teams, and then you can't forget about Tom Brady and the Patriots. But I think we can finally say that it's a new era, and definitely great. I wish him well. Enjoy the Florida weather, and don't get a bad tan.
Yeah. So Alex, what's your reaction going to be when the Patriots either bring Andrew Luck out of retirement, or they go 1-15 this year and they draft a quarterback at the top of the draft next year and get what's his name, the kid from Clemson?
Oh God, Trevor Lawrence.
That's the one.
I could totally see Belichick.
Tank for Trevor.
Or basically trading a lion's share with one of the crappiest teams in the NFL and getting themselves in position to where they can make that a realistic situation for them next year. I can totally see that. It would not surprise me at all because I know that there's a couple quarterbacks out there off free agency and some quarterbacks that are looking to leave their teams, like Cam Newton, per se. So the Patriots can never rule out what they're going to do. We got rid of the quarterback, but we still have to deal with the mad genius in Bill Belichick. But I could definitely see that them going all in and going after Lawrence, and it would be great for football. We'd probably have the most competitive young quarterbacks, in the NFL. Theoretically, if Miami ends up getting, let's say Tua Tagovailoa, I guess it would just make for great football, but it would definitely not make our road to the playoffs easier.
Now, what would make you crazier, Alex? Which is the bigger nightmare? That the Patriots get Andrew Luck to come out of retirement and win the division with him? Or if they go with this guy they have, Jarrett Stidham, and they win 12 games and win the division? Which is worse?
Oof, maybe Stidham, because
because that's not supposed to happen.
When Jamal Adams, went did a little pick six on him earlier in 2019, and what was really funny about that is he immediately got yanked out of that game the minute he threw that pick six, and Brady had to come back in, even though the Patriots are up by 30 to 40 points on us.
1,000.
But
yeah, Belichick wasn't going to tolerate that. Yeah,
but another player that we need to mention that we talked about that is no longer a part of the Jets too, and that would be Tremaine Johnson. He's finally moved on, and we've gotten out of that disaster of a contract. So, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, that was a mere formality. That was, I mean, God, did that have to happen? I mean, it was just so bad. It's. I don't care who you are. Anybody who says they knew he was going to be that bad, shut up. Nobody knew. No, that I
was happy when we got him.
You know how many publications said that was one of the top signings of the offseason? Then you have these clowns with no, I knew it all along, man. I knew that was a bit. Shut up. Stop it. Now, if you want to say he got overpaid, fine, I can live with that. Nobody knew. Guy never played this poorly in his life or anywhere close to it. Just embarrassing. Did we mention Brian Poole, by the way, Alex? You want to touch on that?
Yeah, we only got through. Well, we talked a little bit about McGovern. I think we only got halfway through the free agent signings. We covered Fant, we covered Lewis. Obviously, I think both of us have talked at length about Connor McGovern, and we're happy about his versatility. But yeah, we brought back a player that we took. I guess Mike McCagnon rolled the dice on, and it really worked out well for him. And what's interesting is that we only got him for a 1-year deal at $5 million, and I'm happy about the money aspect here because I didn't want to overpay for a player that had his best career year on a prove-it season. But yeah, this is somebody that played the nickelback extremely well. I did like Buster Screen up until the fourth quarter when crunch time came down because you knew he was good for at least, a defensive penalty or holding or something of that nature.
Yeah, Poole was so much better than Buster Screen. It was ridiculous.
Physicality 10 times better in coverage, as far as I'm concerned. So this is a good deal that we've made. We're keeping, the strength of this defense is staying intact. I've also heard rumors that Mollett is also in conversation and might be coming back too, so that's another good thing. But yeah, I'm very excited to have Brian Poole back. He seems to want to be here. He put that out on social media. Let's run it back, New York, and very, very exciting. Thus far, almost said McCagnon. Joe Douglas has done a very, very good job of not overpaying people. We have outs in some of these contracts. We're not tied to anybody long term. And I guess that's a good way to start for a guy that's in his first offseason as a general manager.
Yeah, I think the only thing I didn't like about it, I would have liked to have seen 2 or 3 years for Poole for the way he played. I think, to me, he signed a 1-year prove-it deal, and he proved it. He showed he could play. I thought he would have got, and honestly, the money, I thought he would get $7 or $8 million in free agency after the year he had. I don't know if you're live on here. Just PFF, the Jets PFF page, just tweeted out that Poole was their 5th-rated corner in the NFL in coverage snaps per reception, and the 9th-rated cornerback overall in the NFL. So listen, PFF, as much as people like to downplay it, if PFF is good enough to be used by the NFL Network and ESPN while they're showing the combine or while they're reporting on stories and players moving, it's good enough for us to use. Not as a be-all, end-all, but when I see these people that are like, oh, PFF doesn't know what they don't know, I have no idea what they're talking about. I mean, give me a break. Right, this is why ESPN and the NFL Network, the actual damn league, uses their numbers and their reporting, but people pretend that, you shouldn't pay any attention. That's not to say they don't have the odd rating where you're like, what the hell are they looking at? I remember they had a pretty decent grade for Kyle Wilson 1 year, and I was like, geez, that guy, I don't think he ever had a good play, let alone a good year. So every now and then there's a head scratcher, but all in all, listen, we're happy Poole is back. We all wanted him back. It's one less thing to worry about in free agents or in the draft. I'm just going to throw out a few names, Alex, guys that are rumored guys who are just good players who are still out there, and we'll do a quick rapid fire. I'll name the player, and
sure.
you give me a quick sentence or two on yes or no. Do you want him, and why or why not? So one guy linked to the Jets through Connor Hughes, free agent cornerback Prince Amukamara. What do you think?
Didn't work out for the blue team. I think he would have a better chance in green, especially with our two awesome safeties that we have, masking some of those deficiencies. I think his play has improved tremendously since he's left the Giants, so I would not mind that at all.
And what about Chris Harris, free agent corner from the Denver Broncos?
I did like that. I do believe that he might have come to agreement with the Chargers, if I'm not mistaken. So he may not be available anymore, but I did see a lot of the guys on the beat doing that, and I'm looking it up as we speak, and it does seem that he has come to terms or agreement to go to the Chargers. So he may not be available at this point.
All right, so that's a no. I would take it.
Anything?
Yeah, I hadn't
so
seen that.
We'd have to cross him out.
I hadn't seen that one. One name, just before we came on, I saw Manish Mehta tweet this
2 years,
out. And
$20 million with the Chargers. From James
How many
Palmer,
years?
just read it. Okay. 2
How many
years,
years?
$20 million. So really not that bad. I mean, I would have.
Not bad for he's an older guy, but you're only tied into him for 2 years. What about Vinny Curry? I saw Manish Mehta mention him earlier as a potential Jets target.
Yes, as I was putting together my list for guys that maybe we should look at, I'm not sure how old Vinnie Curry is. I know that he is a vet, but at the same time, this would probably be like somebody that would McClendon is the defensive leader, next to Jamal Adams, I feel, but I kind of feel like a guy of that pedigree. You bring somebody in like that, I don't think there's going to be any fooling around or horseplay in that locker room. And what that guy has done throughout his career has been phenomenal. And I wouldn't mind seeing him if we're going to take a flyer on somebody.
Now, final two names, Jadeveon Clowney and former Titans corner Logan Ryan.
Clowney, I've said this before. I think about him. I think the talent is there. I think the pedigree is there. I just am really, really concerned because I think he's the definition of high risk, high reward. When healthy, I think he can be one of the best pass rushing guys coming off the edge. And when he's hurt, it's just nothing but wasted money. So I don't know if the Jets are in the type of position where they can gamble on a player of that nature. They might do so, and maybe my thoughts will change, but I'm on the fence with that right now.
Yeah, and we
Logan
just had
Ryan, as you said, I would definitely take. I wanted him when he hit free agency before he went to the Titans a couple years ago. Not very young anymore, but if you can get a deal similar to what Chris Harris just got, 2-3 years, and right around that $10 million mark per year, I would kick the tires on Logan Ryan as well.
Yeah, I think for that price, absolutely, that would make a ton of sense. I just had a question from Rich at Rich Jets on Twitter, asking any chance of a trade for Ngakoue. I don't see it happening. I don't see. Put it this way, I don't see the Jaguars taking less than a 1, and there's no way the Jets are giving up a 1 for that.
Yeah, he was tagged, right? So yeah, we would have to cough up a 1 plus.
It'd have to be a tag
of money. And you'd have to do that to where you're not going to give away a first round pick, that gives you 4 years of a rookie deal plus a 5th year option to spend $20 million on a 1-year deal and then not have some sort of income allocated for a long-term deal. I don't think the Jets are in position to do that, especially with the Jamal Adams situation and Sam Darnold's a couple years from a big contract. I don't think it's in the cards with Ngakoue for the Jets.
Yeah, I don't think so either. Really hoped he would hit free agency, like I said earlier. Earlier in the offseason, he sent out those tweets saying he was free. So I sort of interpreted that he had come to a deal with an agreement with the Jags that they would let him walk and leave him be, which would have been shocking anyway. But obviously they did not. So would have been happy to see him come in as a free agent, but not in a position where the Jets should be giving up. It'll take a 1 and then some, I believe, to get him to go. Unless they feel he's so unhappy and so determined not to play there. that if teams don't budge off of a 1 and maybe Jacksonville says, okay, we'll take a 2, maybe then you make that move. Because, I mean, let's face it, he's a first-round edge rusher. So if you can get him for a second, I think you do it. But I don't see that happening. So, unfortunately, I mean, I'm just guessing, but I would guess no, that wouldn't be happening. But I think that covers all our bases for tonight, Alex. We had Emory talk receivers, talked edge rushers, covered the free agent haul, who's still out there, who there might be some interest in. Oh, I meant to throw this name out.
I do have one
Jenkins.
question for you.
Oh, go ahead, Alex.
Well, I guess it's a two-parter. Is Jordan Jenkins or Robbie Anderson going to be Jets, do you think? Is there a way that Joe Douglas can figure this out and bring them back?
I would, if I had to guess, I would say Robbie, yes. Jordan Jenkins, no. I don't think. I
heard some negative news about an offer was dealt to Jenkins today, and it didn't meet his criteria. I think Ralph, was it Vacciano from SNY?
Yes, Ralph Vacciano. What did he say?
Put that out there. I believe he said that an offer was sent, and it did not meet the criteria that Jenkins was looking for. So it might have been a swing and a miss with Jenkins. But I'm looking that up right as we speak. And they're interested in Mallette is one of the things he reported today and 2 hours ago. George Jenkins had hoped to return to the Jets, but it doesn't sound like there's any chance of that now. The last offer was way below what he wants. So Jordan Jenkins might be in a new uniform next year.
Yeah, that would be like I said. If it's Robbie and Jenkins, I don't see both coming back. I think Robbie's more likely. Not and I said a couple weeks ago that I probably was a little bit too generous. I shouldn't say too generous. When it came to Robbie, I wasn't really considering the depth of the free agent or the draft class in his pursuit of big money, which is and I think I said on the air. Sometimes you got to admit you have a blind spot. I'm a big Robbie fan. So when discussing Amari Cooper, who ended up going to Dallas, but when people said to me, "Oh, the Jets should give Amari Cooper big money," I was kind of like, well, there's no way he's going to get. I didn't think he's going to get $20 million. Obviously, I was wrong. But I thought, what's going to hurt Amari Cooper is a deep draft class. Trying to get that money with such a deep class. It didn't hurt him, but I think it'll hurt Robbie because I like Robbie, but Robbie's not Amari Cooper by any stretch. He got a $100
million deal, right, Cooper?
Yeah, he got 5 years, $100 million. I don't know how much guaranteed, but he got a huge contract.
You were right on that one, Glenn. I know you said he was looking toward 20, and it looks like that's what he got.
Yeah. I said it. It looked like he wanted 20, but then I thought, maybe he won't get it because it's such a deep draft class. But you can never count Jerry Jones out from giving out a bunch of money when Jerry Jones is involved. So yeah, Robbie, I think will end up coming back, or I should say, between him and Jenkins, he's the more likely of the two to come back. But if he's still out there sniffing around, if a team is willing to, I think he'll end up in the 10, 11 million range. Which I'd said maybe he would get 13, 14. But I think it's going to be 10 or 11, and we'll see. We'll see where he lands. If it's with the Jets, I'd be thrilled. If not, I'm fine because, look, just deep class, insanely deep class. So Robbie will be back or he won't. If he's not, there will be other options on the table. So that does it for us tonight. Alex, enjoyed that one. Great having Emory on. Thanks so much for tuning in.
Thank
go
you,
ahead and
Emory, for joining us during these crazy times. We appreciate you.
Yes, and before I go, I almost forgot our amazing sponsor, Mile Social. I was starting to read it earlier and had another thought, and I said I'll do that in a second. Mile Social, JetNation Radio would like to thank our sponsor, Mile Social, for help managing any and all of your business-related social media platforms. Contact Mile Social at milesocial.com. They can help you with your Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, you name it. They will manage it. Just go check out milesocial.com. That is MILE social.com. Check them out and check us out next week when hopefully we can use this show for yet another escape from this miserable reality. And and cover some what will hopefully be some more free agent signings and break down who they've added and how that impacts the draft. Thanks so much for tuning in. Alex, go ahead and give out the Twitter handle and I will log us off.
Yes, guys. Please go ahead and follow us at JetNation.com. if you guys have the time, please give us a review, too, on our podcast. We'd love to hear your guys' feedback. And you can follow me at NYJetsLife24. Thank you, Jets Nation. Have a good night.
Have a good night, everyone.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at JetNation Radio. Glenn is at AceFan23 and Alex is at NYJetsLife24. Until next time, go Jets.